Bonjour, bonjour. Just outside of Notre-Dame. Today is Sunday, the 2nd of February. I'm going to go in and give you a little tour of some of the back chapels of the choir. We're going to go through a couple of them. There's so many details in these chapels that we're going to break it up, or else this video would be about 6 hours long. And there's just so many good things that I can't wait to share with you. But it is early in the morning, but look, it is clear blue skies. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And let's pop inside. Today also is Candlemas, which is the 40th day from Christmas. It marks the return of the light. So there's a special mass and the cathedral opened earlier this morning. The light outside is so fantastic that it's streaming in here. So we're going to go through these first couple chapels. Look how beautiful. We'll pop through the first chapels here, and I'll give you a little backstory. So the chapels that lay out on the north side of the choir were built 1250 to 1270. The eastern side, which was more 1296 to 1320s. But the ones here are much older. And the thing about the chapels is they lay between the buttresses. So on the outside, this is the width of the buttresses up above us. This very first chapel here does not have a name. It doesn't have a plaque of information, but also fully restored with this beautiful wall. There are 25 chapels officially here in the church. Some of them are double chapels in the back here, and some of them are even triple chapels. Some of them, especially on the south side, serve more as corridors into the sacristy as well. Got a little concert for you this morning too. And I can see the beautiful light coming through there. But I'm going to share the first chapel with you, and this is Saint-Martin. Let me get back here. We still have the nativity up. It should be coming down this month. This is a special nativity that was borrowed from a very wealthy man in Naples. It's passed away a few years ago, and it travels around mostly Europe, but it has been in New York just after 9/11. So the first chapel here is Saint-Martin, and it's also dedicated to Notre-Dame de Guadeloupe. It's early in the morning, so they've cleaned off all of the old candles. But everything in the chapels has been fully restored. So, and this was all done Viollet-le-Duc. So Viollet-le-Duc is the one who designed all of this. The chapels in the front that we've also talked about, the north and south of the nave, those, there was parts of it where you could see some of the paint, but all of that was cleaned off. But back here, they saved it, thankfully. So you can see all of the details here. Light still hasn't fully risen to see these windows perfectly, but I had mentioned before that I had wondered what these are, but now I figured it out. They were used for water to clean the liturgical items when they would have masses. And in here, but up on the ceiling, what's also amazing is they discovered just up there, almost to the ceiling, is 14th century fleur-de-lis. We found that actually in the cleaning process the last couple years. In the cleaning process, it was massive, and most of the problems here in the chapels were because it was years and years of soot, candles, from the candles, smoke, also from the air system. just dirtied everything. And I'll show you some, at the very end of this video, I'm going to put a couple pictures on here of the restoration process that they did and what you could see from before and after. But this chapel itself is dedicated to Saint-Martin and Notre-Dame de Guadalupe. And Saint-Martin, here's his story here. What's nice about these chapels here in the back is they've also somewhat retained their names when the chapels in the front side all changed as well. So here on the wall you have the paintings of the story of Saint-Martin done all by Viollet-le-Duc, and these have been incredibly restored and much clearer. A friend of mine said they were Disney-esque, and since he said that, I can't unsee that. It really is in a way, because it just looks like old Disney. But Viollet-le-Duc, when he was in the process of redesigning everything, he wanted to bring back the medieval artistry that they had in the cathedrals. And that was like this, with a lot of color. You had churches that every single thing in it was painted, every wall, column, vault, everything. He wanted to bring that back. But he also, because this was a period of the Romantic movement of my man Delacroix, he also wanted to incorporate that. So that was also a lot of color. So you have, Saint-Martin was a bishop of Tours from 371 to 397. And he is known because it was a cold night in the year 334. And he actually saw a man that was very cold. And so he took his cloak that he had that was very large. He took a sword, he cut it in half and gave the man half of the cloak. He then, the next night, was having a dream. And in this dream, the man came to him, it was Christ, and he came to him and he was wearing the cloak. And so he had said that, you had given this to this poor man, then I will bless you. The piece of the fabric was said to be in the church in Tours, and it was called the chapelle, which gave the name of why they call these all chapels. But I do love that we have all these back. The other chapels in the north and south, as I mentioned, all were painted as well before, and that was all removed. There's a few little pieces you could still find on the wall that they found in the restoration, but all of that has been removed. But I have a book that I used to have when I lived in the States, and I didn't move it with me, but I finally found it again, had to get it from eBay America. Took forever to get here, but it has all the pictures of what every single chapel used to look like. And what's amazing here is also where it has it, so it's like painted kind of like fabric on there. They changed a lot of things in the chapel. They removed some statues, they removed some things, and this was empty before, but you could tell at one point there was a different burial marker here for somebody else. So this room is also about Notre-Dame de Guadalupe, patron saint of Mexico and the Americas. And the story is that the Virgin appeared to a gentleman named Juan Diego on December 9, 1531, on a hill north of Mexico City. And she came to him and told him to tell the bishop to build a church in the same place. Juan passed that information on to the bishop, who asked for a sign. So he went back up to the hill, and on December 12th, the Virgin appeared again to him for the fourth time, and she ended up saying, "Go and pick up all the roses on the hill." So he picked all the roses, he put them inside of his cloak, and then he went back down to the bishop to show him, and he opened up his coat, and it was filled and covered with roses at a time when in December the roses should not be blooming. So it ended up becoming that she was the patron saint. They built a church. This painting here is a copy of the Mosaic of her, and you could see it's really beautiful. Let me zoom in for you. You can see the details here. All done in a mosaic. But you can find Notre-Dame de Guadalupe in quite a few different churches in Paris. Just beautiful. There should be some other pieces in the church, some other paintings, but those have not returned yet. I'm not sure where they would actually hang them, though, either, because there's not exactly a ton of space on the walls here. The stained glass windows on this back side on these chapels we'll see today that are the Griselles are all done by Antoine Lusson, who the son. They were done in 1864, of course, by Viollet-le-Duc. And the thing is that you see that they have the gray, but back then, instead of having clear windows, because you couldn't really get clear, you could get like light pink and light green, because they couldn't get all of the properties out of the glass that would make it clear. So you have a lot of the Griselles. These are still pretty dirty. You have a lot of the scaffolding and stuff behind here, so it's also blocking a lot of the light. And again, the 14th century fleur-de-lis up there, which I love. But I love that everything on here is different. And it's really gorgeous. Hope you enjoy listening to the Mass at the same time, and you could hear me. But let's chat in the next one. The next one's just a door, but it's pretty next one, this is actually just known as the Porte Rouge, the red door. It leads outside to the church, but they don't use this. It's more for emergency and for the officials of the church. But I love the stained glass, but I also love how they've carried off to this over here on either side, where you have like the small columns and the painted trompe-l'oeil glass. And some of the confessionals that they don't use any place in the church. The confessionals now are much different, but you'll find these confessionals in many of the churches in Paris, and they don't use them anymore. But a lot of these were also designed by Viollet-le-Duc, because he designed every little thing in here. When they did the restoration work here on the cathedral, the biggest thing was for the chapels was to clean it and to clean all the dust, and especially the lead dust that accumulated. So they spent about 9 months just doing that. And they had to very carefully do it because it is lead. They had respirators and full suits on, and they were brushing it away, but every single tiny piece of it. And then they had to do a 6-step process for their actual restoration. And then depending on when it was finally time to restore it and repaint it, it depended on what kind of surface it was, where it was, if it was on the ceiling, if it was on the wall, if they used acrylic or they used watercolors, if they filled in the cracks to make it smooth. And according to the Venice Charter, everything has to be reversible. So every single thing they do, the Venice Charter is also the thing that makes it so they should not be taking stained glass windows out of the cathedral, but they're picking and choosing which rule they follow. So this is a really great one. I love this one. So this one is, every time you see this one, especially in the daytime, the colors of this chapel are amazing. This is the Saint Ferdinand III. And let's go in. It's kind of good that Mass is going because it's kind of empty back here. So Saint Ferdinand was the king of Castile and Leon, and he lived from 1199 to 1252. He was also the nephew of Blanche de Castille and the cousin of Saint Louis. There's going to be a lot of people in here that have some sort of relation to Saint Denis in the church, because it was after the Revolution. And so you think about the time of Viollet-le-Duc. And after the Revolution, everybody decided, let's go back to looking at some of those people that came up in French history that were important to French history. Let's look at those again and how we can incorporate them and everything. So, and then also Saint Louis also had paid to have many of the things done in the church, including the rose windows. So he will come up a lot. But he was canonized by Pope Clement X on February 4th, 1671. So he is this back of the wall is the story of Saint Ferdinand. And in the Orsay right now, and I did a video of this a few months ago, I think it was before the cathedral opened, they have these huge parchments, long, that basically were the size of the wall, that Viollet-le-Duc, it's his original drawings of what this was to look like of Saint Ferdinand. But I want to tell you about this tomb here specifically first. because it is really fantastic, and I love the story of the woman that also is here. So this is the tomb. It's a cenotaph, which is basically means it's here for them, but they're not buried underneath. So they're buried elsewhere within the church. Sometimes they were buried underneath the chapels, but most of the time they were buried elsewhere in the church. But this one is really beautiful. And this was Jean-Baptiste de Bude. He was the marshal. You see the little plaque there. He was a marshal and close to Louis XIII. And he lived from 1602 to 1643. But it was his choice in wives that is really fantastic. So this is Renee. So you can see her back there behind him and his lovely curly locks. But he had to leave France actually in 1626 because he lost a duel and he was forced to leave. But he came back and he followed Louis XIII around until 1639. And then after the Duke of Saxe, he was appointed to the Lieutenant General of the King's armies, and he took over the entire French army. In November of 1643, he was struck in the elbow by a cannonball during the siege of Rottwell, and he died on November 24th. His body came back to Paris. He was in a church for 6 months until, under Anne of Austria, the Queen, they decided to have him moved here to Notre-Dame to great fanfare. And they had, this tomb was later created by the family of Renee. And so Renee is amazing because she had realized early on that the person that her father wanted her to marry, she just really didn't think he was all that fantastic. But she had met John Baptiste and thought, oh, he's got great promise. I think I like this guy. And so her father actually agreed. So there's going to be a lot of things that think of that this is the 17th century. Father actually agreed and said, okay, yeah, you don't have to marry him. If you want to marry the other guy, you can. So she married him because she thought he was very ambitious. And she was also very ambitious, even politically. Again, 17th century, not really what women were supposed to be doing. They got married on March 21st, 1632. Her husband was sent away for the 30-year war. And during that time, he had put her in charge of all of his affairs at court and his businesses. Again, something that didn't really happen. When he died in 1643, Cardinal Mazarin saw great potential in her. And in 1645, Cardinal Mazarin and Anne d'Autriche sent her to Poland as the ambassador and a diplomat. She was the very first female diplomat and ambassador, and she went to Poland for Princess Maria de Gonzaga was supposed to be marrying the king there, but he was very old and very frail, and so she had to go to make sure that they got married and even consummate the marriage. But she was successful. She came back to Paris, and they were so proud of the work she did. He gave her another mission, and this time in 1650, he sent her to the fortress of Bresciac, and it's in the Rhine, because Michel Miteller was to replace the gentleman that was down there, Charlevoix, and he refused to leave. And so she went down there and she used her womanly wiles and voluptuousness and would walk by the fence every day and the gate until he finally decided one day to come out and see her, and the police nabbed her. A soldiers nabbed him and got out. So it was, she used her womanly wiles, but then later she ended up being put to be the lady-in-waiting to Marie-Thérèse, who was going to marry Louis XIII, and on their way down to the border to meet, she passed away. So she was returned to France and buried here under the urgence of Anne of Austria, which is pretty amazing. But you can see you have the Saint-Esprit here, the necklace, and you have the H's for Henry IV. But it's a really fantastic tomb. And it has on this side, it's all about her in Latin, if you read Latin. And on this side, but this is, you have the SF for Saint Ferdinand. So on the western side of the wall, we have another cenotaph, which is for Monseigneur Christophe de Beaumont de Beaupère. He was the Archbishop of Paris from 1746 to 1781. He was the 9th Archbishop of Paris and the 121st bishop. And you have this really beautiful tomb here. A lot of these were all redone under Viollet-le-Duc. So Victor Geoffroy Deschamps was a sculptor, and he actually worked with Viollet-le-Duc. But some of them, like the actual wall, the piece here that has all the writing, some of that is actually dates back. Some of them date back even farther, like the one behind me dates back to the 17th century. But he was born on July 26, 1703. He was ordained a priest in 1734 in Bayonne and then Vienna, and then finally came here to Paris. But he was close to the Jesuits, and Pope Clement IX, and so he had condemned a doctrine of the Jansenists, and he ordered the priests of the diocese to refine the absolution to those that had not recognized the religious rites and funerals. And so he was pretty controversial in some of the things that he wanted. He opposed the Parliament of Paris, and Louis XV forbade the Parliament to interfere in spiritual issues. So he ended up causing a lot of problems. He was also against the Enlightenment and Rousseau. But after he died, his heart was placed on the second pillar of the entrance of the Saint-Cyprien chapel in the Dordogne. And then his body is buried in Notre-Dame. And then we have this marker, of course, for him. Again, the stained glass windows in here, but also by Lusson again. And you can see in here this one, and you see his name down there in that little left-hand corner. And then on the right-hand corner, it says Paris, 1864. We have a little less scaffolding on the outside here, so you can see the colors a little bit better. But at the very top, you have a medallion. I'll go outside so you can see a little better. That goes to the family, the Larrey-Boussière family, and that is an old family from Brittany. And he was Jean Ambroise Baston de la Boissière, was the officer of the First Empire under Napoleon. And these chapels really were funded and paid for by very wealthy families and organizations. But let me back up a little bit and I'll show you a better view of the very top medallion. Just such a beautiful chapel with all the color. But let me zoom in here. You can see the very top of that. And some of those medallions in one of the chapels coming up are actually older than the rest of the windows. Viollet-le-Duc took out most of the windows to be redone because some of them hadn't been done well and hadn't been taken care of, especially with the backing and setting they were in. They were pretty badly eroding and also even bowing out of the windows as well. So this next one was always the Chapel of Saint-Germain. And I would try to say that name. I even wrote down how to try to say it, but I'd rather just try not to say it than just butcher it, which is what I will do. But it's a story that I'll share with you because it is really fantastic. It's a Polish name, and now that I know more French, it's really difficult for me to, even if it's Italian names or anything, it's very difficult for my brain to do anything but try to do it into French. And so I know I will just destroy that name. In fact, in the very first video I did here, I think I called it Czechoslovakia, which is not what it is. Look at, you can see the light over there. But let me show you a little bit about this chapel. So again, we have more of the wonderful Viollet-le-Duc, the chapels and the altars. So you have all the altars, which you also have in the north and south of the nave, but these ones are all painted, much more decorative, along with every little bit of the chapel. In Saint-Germain, you might know because of the fantastic district of Paris that I live in. And then you have the church Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Saint-Germain was born in 496. He studied in Avallon, and for 15 years he served as a monk in a small chapel in a small town. He met Childebert, who was the son of Clovis and Clotilde, and he was appointed the Bishop of Paris by Childebert in 555. And so that the painting there on the right is representative Childebert. And you have Saint-Germain, normally seen holding a church as his little iconography. But he was very devout to helping the poor, so that's what you have there on the left. I love the paintings on the wall here, the Crozier, and all the details. Some of the details here, when you do say Disney-esque, and there's another chapel that has some faces, and I hate to say it, but I think they're pretty horrible. These ones aren't very bad, but the faces, when you see it, are just, it's a little bit too much. But there's supposed to be a painting in this chapel, but it still is not here yet, even though it's on the plaque. And this painting is about also called the Black Madonna. So it's the Notre-Dame, which is the Queen of Poland, of that name out there, that I will try not to even say. But it was a painting, and it was a painting known as Black Madonna of Poland. Is said to have been painted by St. Luke and painted on wood that was a piece of the wood from the table of the Last Supper. And this was done in 326. St. Helena was said to have found it when she was looking for the true cross and gave it to her son Constantine, she's also credited with finding the crown of thorns and all the other pieces. But so between April 12th and 14th of 1204, the Saracens invaded Constantinople, and the people prayed to the Black Madonna to be saved. In 1382, the Prince of Poland owned the painting, and when he decided to leave his palace as it was being invaded, an arrow was shot at the painting, striking the figure of the Virgin in the throat. The prince escaped, and he took the painting with him, and they got to a town. And when they got to this little town, they could not move. The next morning they went to leave, and the painting would not budge. So they thought, well, the painting obviously wants to stay here. And that's where it stayed ever since, in the monastery of Jasnagoro, which means mountain of light. And it has stayed there this whole entire time. But it is called the Black Madonna because it's so dirty and just sooty and just has never been clean. It's very dark. I'll put a picture on my website when I cover this on the podcast in a couple weeks, so you can see it as well too. But it's supposed to be hanging here in the chapel, a copy of it, but it still is not, which is kind of too bad. But the painting itself, she was actually beatified to be called the Queen of Poland. This is another fantastic tomb that is here, a cenotaph. But look at the details. Well, I'm going to zoom in on some of these. This is marble. Just think, this is marble. And that's lace turned from marble. But this is the Monseigneur Antoine Eleanor Léon Leclerc de Juillet. And it is pretty amazing. He was born on November 2nd in 1728. He became the 10th Bishop of Paris, so right next door, his buddy is over there as the 9th. He ended up being... he wanted to vote to give civil rights to Protestants, which didn't go over very well in the Catholic Church. So he left for a while. He went to Chambry, later on to Germany, but he was still recognized by the Pope and the Holy See as the Archbishop of Paris. So he returned in 1802 after the Concordat, which was a big thing with Mr. Napoleon. And on January 31st, 1802, the Pope Pius VII asked him to actually renounce his archbishopship. And on March 21st, 1808, Napoleon ended up giving him, named the canon of the Imperial Chapter of Saint-Denis, the church north of Paris, and then Count of the Empire on June 7, 1808. He died March 19, 1811. He was buried in a common cemetery, but then Louis XVIII had him moved to Notre-Dame. And he is buried here with his brother, that's the Marquis, as well. I don't know where that painting of the Black Madonna would even go to. Maybe they'd put it here on the wall. But the details here is pretty amazing. Again, this is another one that was, this one was done 1824 by Pierre Cartier. He's a sculptor, so this was done before our friend Viollet-le-Duc got in here. But just all of these, every little detail in here, and the marble, and the light. Okay, I've got one more chapel for you today, and it's a goodie. It's got lots of stuff in it. So let's check out Saint Louis. So I mentioned there's a lot of Saint Louis. So here we have Saint Louis, one of my favorites. Saint Louis was Louis IX, King of France, 13th century. He's known for the crown of thorns. He's also the only king to be named a saint. And you have on the walls of the chapel, this is a double chapel, you have on the walls of the chapel the fleur-de-lis and the crown with the fleur-de-lis on it. But this is a chapel that I remember often visiting many times when I would come before the fire. And one thing I love about it is the paintings on the wall. And up at the very top there, look at that image. So beautiful. I'm so glad that the sun is out when I share this to you today. So up here at the very top, in the center, is a gentleman that needs no introduction. He's very easy to spot, even though elsewhere in the church here he has his head. But there at the top in the middle is Saint-Denis, of course, the very first bishop of Paris. Another one of my favorites. The Saint-Denis is up there, and he is in between his two companions, Saint Roustiac and Saint Eleuthère, which I'm sure I'm getting that wrong. Once it has multiple syllables in it, it just gets even harder. But on this side, you have 4 female saints, and again, we have female saints that are somehow attached to our man, Saint-Denis. On the very first one, you have Saint Clotilde. Saint Clotilde was the Queen of France. She was married to Clovis. She was the queen from 475 to 545, and she is also featured in many things, including in the garden of the Jardin de Luxembourg. She's in many churches, including Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, because she was the one that was besties with Saint Geneviève. The next one is Saint Rodrignon, which is the Queen of France as well. She was married to Clotaire, who's the son of Clovis, so that's the daughter-in-law. And then the one there that looks like a nun, that is Blessed Isabel of France. She was a sister of Saint Louis. She was very devout. She built a monastery just outside of Paris. She's also, there's a chapel at the church that's at the Ile Saint-Louis. There's a chapel of a beautiful stained glass window dedicated to her. And then on this side, you have Saint-Jean de Valois. She was another queen of France. She was a daughter of Louis XI. She married Louis d'Orléans in 1476. And her father died in 1483. Her brother, Charles VIII took the throne until 1498. And her husband had his big shot to be her husband got to be the King of France. But he decided that to say that their marriage was never consummated because they did get married and both went their separate ways, that he could get it annulled because he wanted to marry Anne of Brittany, who was his sister-in-law. Anne of Brittany was the wife of Jean's brother that had passed away. And so she was only, because Jeanne de Valois was only Queen of France for 8 months and 10 days. She went back to her life of devotion to the Virgin Mary, and she founded the monastic order of the Annunciation. So I think she just said, I don't need you, dude, I'm out of here. But you also have this other fantastic cenotaph here, and this was actually, that is his heart inside here. And this was, everything in here is, a lot of the stuff that's in here, including the up above us on the windows, are to one family, the Noya. And this was the Louis Antoine Cardinal. He was Archbishop of Paris from 1695 to 1729. He was born in 1651 in Cantal. He was the second son of Anne de Noyer, and this is his second wife, Louis Boyer, who was a lady in waiting to the Queen, Mary Therese. In March of 1679, he was named the Bishop of Cahors, and in June 1680, the Bishop of Châlons-en-Champagne. But this one is really, it kind of reminds me of the Colbert and Saint-Eustache. But after Louis XIV's death in 1715, the regent Philip d'Orléans named him the president of the Council of Conscience. But he became very close with the Duchesse de Berry, who was the daughter of the regent. And after her husband died in 1714, she had a good time in Paris, we'll say. She also got pregnant quite a few times. And one of those pregnancies was in March of 1719. And she thought that she was actually going to die during the pregnancy. And so he came to the Palais de Luxembourg to see her, and he invited the priest of Saint-Sulpice to come, and the priest refused to give her the sacrament, because he had said that she had been got pregnant out of wedlock, and she was a sinful woman, and so he ended up giving it to her, but she became pregnant again a few months later, and she actually died during that pregnancy, July 20th of 1719. So she was having a good time here in Paris. But he was a very polarizing figure because he upset many people. Upon his death, he was buried in multiple spots of the cathedral, including his heart is in this chapel. His entrails are buried elsewhere, and his body is buried in another spot of the cathedral. But he had the chapel dedicated to his family. He also ended up using a lot of his own money to do work on the cathedral, including the south rose window, which is what Viollet-le-Duc then had to fix and change, because the work that they did on it under him really damaged it. Look at how beautiful the vaults are. I just love to stand in the corners on the far sides and just look up and take in every little bit. But there's 18 members of the Noyer family buried here in this chapel, and you can see up above you have their crest up in the upper windows. These do go back to 18th century. So these are pre-Viollet-le-Duc up there, so they saved all of those. This tomb that's right here, this is just a cenotaph, which is just kind of more of a sculpture. Actually, I cannot find anything on this guy. Trust me, I looked for quite a long time. He is Etienne Hiver. He was a canon of Paris and Rouen. And this is a really interesting piece. It was done in the 15th century, but it's kind of, look at, there's like bugs and things on his body. It wasn't in this chapel before, and I can't find where it was in the church before this as well. You can see it's kind of thin. So this side, we have some more. These are some male saints, as well as a former empire. Again, all this is done by Viollet-le-Duc. At the very top, you have Christ, and right between Christ, you have Saint-Jean, and then, of course, the Virgin on the left, out there. Hopefully you could see it with the glare. Somebody sent me a message about something I could put, a lens I could put on here that would get rid of some of that glare. So I need to do that. But again, we have the murals here of Viollet-le-Duc. And on the left is, of course, Saint Louis. And Saint Louis is always easy to spot because he is holding his crown of thorns, which I love. The next one is Saint Cloud. Saint Cloud lived from 522 to 560. He's right there is the second one. He is the grandson of Clovis I and the son of Clodomir. Both brothers were killed, and he renounced the crown and decided to go back to be a monk. So it's kind of funny. On the other side, we have Isabel, who was a sister of Louis, and she renounced. Basically, she walked away from everything. And she's, if you look at the way he is dressed, Saint Claude, and then you look at Isabel in her nun's habit there. But the third is Saint Louis d'Anjou. He was the Bishop of Toulouse. He was the son of Henry II, King of Naples, and the great nephew of Louis IX. And then this handsome gentleman here on the right is Charlemagne, Holy Roman Emperor, King of the Franks. He definitely has his presence in here. This statue was done much later in the 20th century. It really doesn't fit in here. It looks like something you'd buy at the garden center to put in your lawn. But I love the chapels. I love the flooring, everything in here. But I'm going to give you, it's the chapels we're going to do today, but I'm going to give you a little walk around just to show you the light, because it is pretty amazing today. And I'll show you that. And then I want to show you outside a plaque that shows kind of the before and after. Some of the chapels, like the one we just saw, was double chapel. Then you have these chapels that are triple chapels. Very large. But you can see the light in here today. It's pretty amazing. We'll do a whole thing also just about a lot of the other stained glass. The priest is back here at the moment. So everybody's running over to look inside here. But you can see, just look at that. Look at that light. So gorgeous. I can't wait to share with you all of these chapels. We'll do that next week. I'll have that for next Sunday. Oh, look. Look at the light on the columns. Got Adam and Eve up there. So beautiful. All right, let's pop outside and I'll show you a little before and after. All right, it's such a beautiful morning. Let's take a little stroll on the outside. So when you leave now, you come out the door of Saint Anne, which I have mentioned before. It's the oldest of all of the sculptures on the outside on the facade of the church. It's beautiful. There's another mass getting started there. Actually, we're pushing everybody out of the back. Because I believe the Archbishop is here. Look at this light. The Kings of Judah looking down, including Viollet. This golden light. I've said it before, and I'll say it 1,000 more times. The light in Paris in the winter is the best light of the whole entire year. The very low shadows coming down is pretty fantastic. But this line here is just for anybody going in to visit. There's a separate line for tickets. That line is usually almost non-existent, because even now, when the number of people that are coming to visit are lower than they were during Christmas, it's still pretty difficult to get the tickets. They only put about 8,000 of them, they say, online. I think it's maybe more like 8, because there's not usually a lot of tickets available. And so the cathedral's been open for about an hour and a half. It's Sunday morning, again, January, it's a little quieter, but pretty easy to get in, pretty quick. The line was very fast, but just because it's so beautiful, why not just walk around the outside? And I want to show you specifically that one plaque. The security presence that they put in place since before is much stronger as well. I think the businesses are happy to have Cathedral open again. Can't imagine what this is going to be like this summer. Whew, chilly. These fantastic little thingy-majiggies that I keep in my pocket. They're nice and warm, but my right hand holding the camera here, it's a little cold. But here again, I see all the time people saying, oh, there's still so much work, still covered in scaffolding. But I'll remind again for the 1000th time that this scaffolding is all here just to get people up and on to the facade, up to the roof, because you're still doing a lot of work on the North Tower. The tower should be open in the summer, they say, to be able to walk back up there again. And they're working on the bottom, the open work of the spire and finishing the roof, which should be done maybe even by the end of this month, which will be amazing to see. Look at this light. Look at that. There it is. The Port Rouge that I showed you from the outside is just right here behind us. It's, I was sharing, even getting to the point a few times a week, the work on the outside. And it was in the in the news and the papers all the time, especially those last few months before the reopening of everything they were doing. And now it's just kind of creeped along very quietly. So here is the coat of arms I was showing you on the inside. I love this. I bring people out here to show because this is a great example of what it looked like before, of how dirty it was and how everything had to be cleaned. The pieces put away there in the treasury that were around the church. Most of that stuff, none of those things really went back to the chapel, sadly. But this image right here is the one that I think is just crazy. That is in the chapel of Saint Marcel, and you could see the before and after. And that's just from dirt and soot and candles for years and years, and also lead, that got on there. Amazing, the difference there. And then I love this one. I'll show you this guy next week. But I love how they did this. Even there's a reflection on here, but the before and after. And his hand was always very shiny and white like that, because you could, you'd see, whenever you see a statue, like a bronze statue, and it's really bright in one spot, or like that, where you can still see the white marble, it's because people rub it, and a lot of times people think it's good luck. So, I mean, why not? And then, of course, the stained glass before and after. They also added all these huge barriers in here, which is going to make for good times when the people are back in force. Look at how beautiful this light is. I'm going to finish this so I could get some great pictures. But they've left these up for now. A lot of these pictures have gone into different books, official books about the restoration that you could get. There's one of them that was supposed to also come out in English, but I think the last time I checked on Amazon for my mom online, I did not see it. But you can see up there the open work. So I've tried to zoom in as much as I can, and I can't really see anything behind that. So where you see the scaffolding at the base of the spire, that is where they're covering the open work with all the lead. And again, that's supposed to be done hopefully by the end of this month. And then you could see the back chapels there. But you do see how the buttresses are laid out. So see the ones here on the north side, how close those are. So, and if you look straight down, you can see how those go right into the windows of the chapels. Then you have back here the double chapel, and then the triple chapels. And you have the buttresses. So again, all part of the stability of a Gothic cathedral. But we'll pop over to the other side. We'll see if there's not really anything new going on over there, but just to give you some of this beautiful light. And I'll see you on the left bank. Just a little silent view. All the bells. You could hear the bells. Multiple churches, bells ringing. Including Our Lady. And those are the bells from the south or north tower. Not the big boys, but just stay quiet so you can hopefully hear them. For a long time today. But here's another better view of the work on the spire. the bridge so you can keep listening to them. But make sure you join me next week. We'll do the big chapels, the big triple chapels, and all their fantastic details. And the stained glass. We even have 14th century paintings that are in there, frescoes on the walls. Such a beautiful morning. They're slowing down. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. Eat a crepe today. Today is all about also crepes, not about groundhogs here in France. It's about crepes. And if you could flip the crepe in the pan and have it land flat, it's good luck. So give it a try. Alrighty. Make sure you also listen to the podcast. New episode tomorrow. The fourth part of the Rooms of Anne of Austria in the Louvre. And then after that, we're going to have another Notre-Dame episode next week. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And we'll see you soon.